Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. We're going to take a look at another game of Conquest Last Argument. This will be the second outing with the new rules 100 Kingdoms. The other weekend we had a games day where I was up against the other 100 Kingdoms player in my meta, and of course we shared out the different sub-factions. I was playing as the Imperials and the Theists, and he was playing Feudal Orders, so that was a fun one. Later that day, I got to try another variation of 100 Kingdoms using Feudal and Imperial. And it was a bit more of an impromptu game because I didn't think I was going to get two games in that day, but based on the miniatures that I had brought along, I was able to put something a little bit different together. Didn't quite have the right cards though, so I had to proxy a few cards, as we'll see from the photos I'll be showing you, but was still a fun one and still a good opportunity to try out a few little rules here and there. So since the rules came out and since I played those games, I have been sort of obviously on Discord and talking to people about how the rules work. There are a few things that I got wrong. Probably one of the most notable things was really that you don't need to pay for the veteran upgrade on a light regiment in order to score from the resolve bonus. So where I previously thought that if you have a unit of mercenary crossbowmen, and if you put a character in them, that's 4 stands, giving you the +1 to resolve, and therefore +1 to scoring from the Relentless Drill's ability. I previously thought that you had to pay for the veteran ability, because when you go into Relentless Drill's wording, it sort of gives you the explanation of what you get by having the veteran bonus to your regiment, being like 5 stands means you get inspired for free. And then it says, additionally, you get this other benefit. And I thought that actually meant, additionally, if you pay for veterans, which is not how you're meant to read it. So the cool thing there is that what you can do with a lot of regiments is really just get the scoring ability, even if they're light, without having to pay for veteran. A lot of the time, paying for veteran really is worth it anyway. 15 points for mercenary crossbowmen gives them that extra, power when they shoot up close. And squires, for example, getting the tenacious against shooting, I should say. But I think the key with Feudal in particular is that your noble lord can dish out quite a bit of free veteran, and that's sort of how you want to build your list. So we'll go into the one I used on the day, and then I'll just briefly show you one that I'm kind of working on, which is interesting. So at the time, when I got to the game after lunch and decided to play something a bit different, we have the noble lord here with all of his get-up, the Colored Burn, eccentric fighting style, just an awesome combination now. 6 household guard, I've got another 3 coming in the mail. Can't wait to field the bigger unit, but can't do that just yet. Chapter mage with water and fire. I'm starting to think that actually just going straight up water is better, because there are, even though the water mage wasn't really that good in the past, given that you're wanting to be quite infantry heavy nowadays, and because it's really worth it to bring back 1 additional stand on a regiment that had 4 stands and has gone down to 3, just so you can score, water is actually quite cool now, so I want to start playing it a bit more. Imperial Officer, you shouldn't really be taking Steel Legion at the moment. They are in need of a buff, but I had the models in my box, and I decided to put them on the table with the Drill Master. I suppose one difference with them now is that you can actually start the turn with the battlefield drills on them, putting hardened on them, whereas previously you had to sort of take various different upgrades to get any sort of support for them, so there is that. Hunter Cadre still just as good as ever, and the Mounted Noble Lord, a thing I realized here is that if you take either of the Noble Lords as your warlord, the Professional Troop Supremacy says while any friendly feudal regiments are within 8 inches of a friendly feudal character, meaning that could be the Noble Lord on foot or the Noble Lord on the horse. So that's why I think that a feudal subfaction is really, really interesting right now. So that's the list I'm going to be playing for this bat rep, but I just want to briefly sort of explain an idea I have for list building at the moment, where you take your Noble Lord on foot and you give him a household guard unit and you buff this up to like 8 regiments. Maybe take some men-at-arms or something, and you can take household knights if you want to. You can take mounted squires, or you could take longbowmen, for example. That's one way to do it, because the warlord gives everything in the warband veteran. So personal entourage gives it to the unit that he's leading, but if he's your warlord, the faction ability for family tradition says here that regiments in the Warlord's Warband gain veteran at no cost. So because you'd be spending points on each of these veterans to have, because you'd be spending points on each of these regiments to have veteran, you're effectively saving yourself like 40 points worth of value by having that Warlord. So that's one reason why I'm starting to really like Feudal. So your secondary faction, I like to make that the Theist Priest and just simply put him in a unit of Militia Bowmen, because that's the minimum requirement to get the Priest in there. He becomes the dynastic ally. You've got one turn where you get free Blessed on everything. And that's going to make pretty much every regiment in your entire army feudal. You then take the Archangel, always go with the Spear and Shield one because of the shield, that's really important. And the Archangel is going to have Divine Purpose kicking in on the entire army on the Supremacy turn, or in other situations where he casts a spell giving it the extra speed. The Archangel is always within range of itself, so it'll always get it, and regiments within 12 will actually get that buff regardless of whether they're under the effects of the spell, so it just starts to become a really good combo. So more so than the regen, it's more about the Divine Purpose and Spirit Glimmers, right? So then you come over to the Mounted Lord here, you put him in a regiment of Household Knights, you give him some Mounted Squires, you can take some Longbowmen if you want to, you can put, another unit of Knights in there. And suddenly you're at 2,000 points, but the Noble Lord on horse is actually giving a 6-inch bubble of rerolls to all of this stuff, and the foot one is doing that as well. So you've got 2 6-inch bubbles, and on the Supremacy turn, every single regiment this army is getting Blessed or whatever this guy dishes out, and the Archangel is delivering a 12-inch bubble of potentially regen, but also the extra speed. So that's why I think this kind of setup is really, really good, and I'll be playing lists that look like this in the near future. Moving on though, my opponent running Spires, and he's just playing a version of Directorate that he quite likes. Biomancer in the unit of Sentinels. I like that combo, but I think that you really want to take at least 5 Sentinels if you're doing that. This particular player doesn't own the actual models in the collection to do so, but I really feel like to get the most out of the Biomancer with the Sentinels, you want to take a couple more. With Burnout, they can cross a really awesome distance and get tons of impact hits in, and then you want to be able to heal them back without them being broken, right? Lineage Highborn, Cascading Degeneration did get nerfed, but the thing is you still get Aura of Death 8 if they're in a big unit, which they are. Prideborn and Avatara, his Centaurs here are a good combo with the Hunter-Killer teams, giving them extra impacts if you shoot something first. And the classic High Clone Executor with Marksman variant. Can't go wrong with them. Alright, we're playing Grind Them Down. The special thing about the scenario, as you guys probably know, is that you've got to mark one of the objectives that has nothing in it, and then move on to it for a bonus 3 points. So each zone is worth 1 point, and if you move on to a zone, you get 1 for having the zone, but plus 3 for moving on to a zone that you nominated in advance of the turn. So that's how you can get 4 points from a zone. However, if you are simply camping 2 zones, you get 1 for each zone plus 2 points for having both of them. So there's no point in the early game moving off the objective and back onto it in a lot of cases. But if you get 3 zones where you're still getting the bonus points, and to collect that additional 3, moving off it and coming back onto it is worth it. So it starts to become kind of a thinking man scenario and a bit technical, and we'll talk about it a bit more as the game goes by. But you can also have a situation where your regiments are kind of bouncing between the N1. For example, if I'm in a situation where my opponent has got these 2 zones here, and I've got the middle zone here and 1 zone here, I might want to bounce a regiment to that and then the next turn reform and move back to it just to pick up the bonus 3 points. So it can sort of turn into a bit of that in the late game. Alrighty, so this is Game Stay, Auckland City at Hobbymaster. Really good time, really good turnout. We've got 4 tables of Conquest here. So in the foreground, that was from the game with Brian, and we've got a couple of First Blood games elsewhere there. And this... hopefully I've got the right game here. Yep. So these cards here, if you look at this, I've got the Theist Priest card out. That is just representing the Chapter Mage card because I showed up for that morning's games with my other Theist Priest list and I didn't pack the actual cards for the rest of my army into my luggage box. So we're just using some proxies here for this one. So starting the game with the Imperial Officer going into the Mercenary Crossbowmen to help them to score. The Mage doing the same thing with her Crossbowmen and bringing in the Squires as well. We have picked up all of these on the dice roll and that is the order. So opponent brings in the Force Grown Drones drones on his right flank first, and then followed by my regiments moving into the middle, 2 units of crossbows nearby to each other. I'm setting that up so that the mage can heal the crossbows belonging to the Imperial officer to keep him scoring on this zone to the left. I have stayed within 1 inch of it. You can't score in turn 1, and in turn 2 you can nominate that objective and move on to it. So as we talked about, this will yield me 1 objective point, and also if I nominate it, I'll get +3 for that one, so it should give me 4 on the first turn. And Squires going up the left-hand flank there to try and get some opportunists. So here we are, turn 2, activating all the characters first, and the priest will go last just in case anything comes within range. Sorry, the mage will go last just in case anything comes in range for her to blast them with the fire dart. Okay, Avatara coming in on his left-hand flank, nominating this objective but not having enough speed to reach it. Men-at-Arms going opposite them towards the center behind this hill here, and then the large unit of Household Guard going directly in the middle. They are nearby to that mage that you can see in the bottom left because they want to benefit from her healing, and also the Noble Lord is giving out his juicy bubble of reroll 6s to the Men-at-Arms and the crossbows on either side of him. We have the Squires just marching up next to these Force-grown drones. They're in a position where if I win the roll next turn, I'll be able to attack them. Of course, here's me making the exact same mistake that my opponent did in our previous game, where something else just shows up and shoots them. So that's kind of hilarious. And double Hunter Cadre regiment over here. The great thing about this is that they are opposite that unit of Avatara. So the Avatara will not really be able to afford to just sit there. They'll have to rush over to my side of the battlefield. I'll have multiple regiments ready to outmaneuver them, and the Hunter Cadre just really good at plinking off the high armor of the Avatar. They've got AP1, they've got Fiend Hunter, and of course they're going to be good and quite good in close combat. Not so much against the Aura of Death, but we'll deal with that later. So turn number 3, we're activating the Squires first because we're hoping to attack the Force-grown drones before he brings on his Desolation drones and just shoots me, or his Prideborn, for example. So that's where we're going with that one. Unfortunately, opponent wins the roll, and the Desolation drones just move on here, blast me. These Squires do not have the veteran bonus, and this is just a list-building error, really. If we go back to what I was talking about before with my proposed Feudal Theists setup, where I've got the Squires in this warband, they will get veteran automatically from the Supremacy ability, the faction ability, giving them that bonus there of Advanced Vanguard training, where they get Tenacious 2 from volley action. So when they get shot at by a unit like this, it makes them so much more resilient. But as it stands, rolled quite poorly from my side, and I lost 2 stands. So we charge into the Desolation drones, just really trying to keep them sort of pinned down to the back of the field, stop them from getting too far forward in the mid game, and just really keeping them out of the action for as long as possible. Over here, just a bit more maneuvering. He's got his Incarnate Sentinels going towards the center. They'll be up against the Mage and the crossbow, so he's just staying behind that hill. You might be able to see that in the photograph there, where that's going to block line of sight from the Mage, so she can't really fire dart them and shoot them very easily. That's the plan there. All right, if you look closely at the corner of this Men-at-Arms regiment here, they've got their little pinky toe on the top right of the stand, just touching this objective, and this white and purple marker here is saying that I'm going to get +2 for nominating this particular zone, so that's how they're going to net me another 4 points at the end of that turn. We've got the Prideborn people showing up and shooting at the Squires here, but rolling ridiculously badly somehow with this regiment, and not actually killing the Squire, leaving him on like 1 wound or something dumb, but just poor rolling from the opponent there. On this side, we're now moving up with the Imperial Officer and the crossbows up against his Force-grown drones. These Force-grown drones can gain scoring from the Biomancer's Supremacy ability, so that's what they'll be doing shortly. And over here, that's where the crossbows are situated. Just thinking about moving off of this zone again later so we can move back onto it and just sort of push on and push off. Over here, Avatar are getting onto their objectives, so they'll net some points from that. And, yeah, crossbows just staying put, really, just hanging back without needing to move any further forward. We don't want to get charged by the Incarnate Sentinels at this point. And the Hunter Cadre now able to push forward, just getting far enough forward that they'll be within range of 16-inch shots against the Avatara. That is going to light them up with the Fiend Hunter, and we're already shredding one stand worth of Avatara, and that forces my opponent to do something. If he charges one of these regiments, I'm going to be able to flank charge with the other one, so really happy with that positioning there. Speaking of positioning, we also have the Mountain Noble Lord and the Knights arriving behind that first unit of Hunter Cadre. This is to countercharge the Avatara after they've been damaged by the Hunter Cadre, and also to march forward quickly onto his objective after I've dealt with that regiment. So this is going to be quite helpful. And I feel like this is a fragile unit, but they can get their value if they get the march, if they get the charge and the clash, and they're up against something that doesn't have too much armor piercing. So we'll see how that goes. This is going to be turn number 3 now. We're going to go with the Hunter Cadre first because they want to be able to shoot at the Avatara before anything else happens. This Order of the Sword card that I've got in my collection here, that is just simply representing the Steel Legion card because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't have a suitable card to put into the deck because I left it at home. Alright, so that's an overview of the battlefield. Before we start turn 3, you can see that I've got quite a lot of my army deployed, and he's actually going quite slowly with his reinforcements. Those Avatara are going to have a tough time, but there's a lot of stuff yet to come to back them up. I've also got to a position where I can move the Household Guard into the center to actually take that objective, and on the left-hand side, I've got the Steel Legion arriving behind the what do you call those guys? The Mercenary Crossbowmen. Alrighty, so that's how we're looking. He decides to use Burnout and charge these Force-grown drones all the way across the board into my crossbowmen, and then use Catabolic Rupture or whatever it's called to blow them up. And that does delete a couple of Mercenary Crossbowmen stands, but I do have that Water Mage which can heal them back, which is going to be quite crucial. Over here, we've got the Hunter Cadre shooting at the Avatara, and again, stripping a few more wounds off them, forcing them to really do something about that. So over here, my opponent deciding to actually pull back, move around a little bit, stay out of range of the other Hunter Cadre unit. So he's really just waiting for more reinforcements to arrive to try and back up the Avatara before he pushes in, which, you know, is a reasonable move to make. With that in mind, the other Hunter Cadre moving up further so they can then get back into range with the Avatara, shooting long range, and just getting a little bit more damage done. Fiend Hunter proving to be really, really useful here. At this stage, the Squire is destroyed by the Desolation drones. He obviously is up against lethal demise, etc., so nothing really happening there. We have the Imperial Officer who is able to rally the broken unit of Mercenary Crossbowmen, and they can be healed later now that they've been rallied since the Mage is nearby. On this side, we have the Incarnate, so just moving a little bit further forward to the right. They just don't want to charge the Household Guard just yet. The Household Guard probably will beat them, considering they have the support of the Men-at-Arms and the Crossbows to their side, and the Warlord ability with Caliburn and everything like that, and there's only 3 Incarnates there, so he's just hopping to the side a little bit, again, waiting for the Siegebreaker, waiting for the Centaurs. So over here, moving the Men-at-Arms, just positioning a little bit better. We want to be able to charge the Avatar in the flank if they put that move in against the Hunter Cadre at some point, or I could just use this unit to move up and get in the way of them and then be a bit more aggressive with the Knights, potentially. Now, we have the Prideborn moving further forward. They're able to shoot in any direction they want, so they can shoot backwards and eliminate the Mounted Squires, no problem there, and then they can move up further and go after the crossbowmen in the distance. The Knights, just moving and repositioning and reforming a little bit. They were previously having to sort of keep a little bit of a narrower width to charge past both units of Hunter Cadre, but what we're expecting now is for the Avatar to either stay back and eventually die, in which case the Knights will move charge through the Hunter Cadre onto that next objective, or we're expecting him to charge me, in which case I'm going to need as much frontage as I can to get the clash on them. Alright, he's now arrived with his Marksman clones. These guys can shoot through the forest against the Hunter Cadre with the High Clone Executor there. Of course, the forest providing obscuring, and I've got evasion too, so not quite losing a full stand against the Marksman clones yet, but I'll slowly take damage against that shooting. Over here, the Mercenary Crossbowmen just wiggling around a little bit, trying to get the Mage in range of the Imperial Officer's unit, which is to the left, and then we can start healing with that juicy water magic. Over here, we're reforming the Noble Lord's regiment. He is just resetting everything here so that when the Incarnate Sentinels try to get towards the objective, I'm going to have a bit of a better time with the frontage. You can also see that a Siegebreaker has appeared in the background of that photo as well, so that could be a bit of an issue. With Smite, obviously, and Burnout, that beast will rip through the Household Guard quite handily, so that's what my opponent really has been waiting on. Over here, we've got a big unit of 5 Steel Legion, who now move on to the objective. They are in range of the healing, they are in range of the hardened from the Imperial Officer, but they will be up against those Leonine Avatar in the distance. So I'm happy to score points here. If he comes too close, the Steel Legion can hit him quite badly, but we're not really expecting the Avatar to come too close. It does depend on what my opponent decides to do. He's got a couple of different options there with the Desolation Drones still on their way. Alright, so we're around about turn 4, maybe turn 5, I can't quite remember. We are going with the Hunter Cadre first, because they are going to be shooting at the Avatar, and of course I want to activate them before they get charged, before obviously Cascading Degeneration goes off. Gilded Legion is not actually a Gilded Legion. I think Gilded Legion is meant to be the Steel Legion card, and the Order of the Sword card is meant to be the Halberdiers one. I can't remember what was what. All I remember is that I had to use some proxy cards here. We've even got a Militia card in there, which I think is meant to refer to one of the Crossbowmen regiments. No, I think it was the... What was it? The Household Guard? I'm not even sure at this point, honestly. So let's just go into the turn. That's a overview of the battlefield as it looked after pretty much our entire armies have arrived. I think the only regiment that he's waiting on is the Centaurs at this point. I should have everything on the board at this stage. So that's how it's looking. Right, so we have Burnout, and we have the Siegebreaker march charging in here, and it does a little bit of damage, but I feel like what you want to be doing is coming in with the Incarnate Sentinels and the Siegebreaker at the same time, so that, you know, you've got 2 things to deal with. The Household Guard will eventually do enough damage to the Siegebreaker, but it will take them a couple of rounds of whacking at it. Alright, so they've reduced down to 3 stands plus the character. Of course, I can use the Automage, and then you can see that the Incarnate Sentinels are now moving in a position to attack. I feel like just a problem with this play overall from Spires is that the footprint of the Siegebreaker prevents the Incarnate Sentinels from moving in. So you're fighting your opponent with 1 regiment at a time, which you really shouldn't be doing very often in this game. It's much better to set up your play so that you can somehow get in there with a couple of regiments at the same time, put more pressure on your opponent, and prevent them from being able to target, focus fire one of your regiments at a time, which is obviously going to be more efficient for them. So over here, we've got more shooting at the Avatar with the Hunter Cadre, and more shooting back at me with the Marksman Clones. Not too much done there. He is down to 4 stands and 3 wounds inflicted by the looks on that particular one, so that's slowly dropping. What have we got next? Over here, the Mage activates. She is able to put in some healing, possibly on the Imperial Officer or the Household Guard, one of the 2. But the thing is that the Mage can also shoot at the Siegebreaker. And, of course, we have this lovely, lovely ability. Of course, this is my Theist sample list, so let's go back to what I've actually got, which is Mercenary Crossbowmen. If they have Veteran, it gives them +1 volley if they're in effective range. So if these guys move to within range of the big beast and are within 8 of it, they'll get +1 volley, which really helps. And the AP obviously is going to be good against the big beastie as well. Double checking that it does not have hardened. No, it doesn't. It'll come down to defense 3, so that's how they can really help kill it. Now over here, my opponent, marching with the Leonine Centaur people, and firing some nasty, nasty arrows at the Steel Legion, which is painful, and rolling quite well, and unfortunately for me, doing quite a bit of damage to them. And as you can see from the top of the photo, I'm reduced to like 3 stands left out of 5, so pretty punishing. I did roll a lot of 6s, because he's got Deadly Shot, double wounds for 6s, so quite a lot of men die from that. And he's even got the Desolation Drones coming up the rear, so that's problematic for me. But he's left that unit on the zone in range of a possible march charge there from the boys. Over here, what we're doing is we're charging the Siegebreaker with the Brave Men-at-Arms. The Men-at-Arms can't be expected to do that much damage to the big beast. And if the big beast attacks them, they're going to die very quickly. But the importance of this play is that it means that I have an additional 3 stands touching that zone. And this is going to keep me well in the lead in terms of scoring, because we've both got 2 zones each on our side of the table. But the middle zone means that you still pick up the bonus 2 points for having at least 2 zones, and you can get the legitimate +3 from moving off and then on again onto your other zones on the side. So that's a really good play, and also it means that if he destroys my Household Guard, the Siegebreaker is still going to be locked in place and won't be able to sort of escape and go after the crossbows. It'll have to turn its attention to the Men-at-Arms, in which case the crossbows are still going to be shooting at it with that +1 volley we just talked about, and the AP, and the Mage, etc. The other thing too is that the Men-at-Arms, if they scrape together a few wounds on it, it does have to reroll its resolve checks from being charged in the flank. So this is why we're making this play. The alternative was to send these people after the Avatara, but I think this situation's a lot better. Now, he finally has his Centaur Avatar appearing. These guys are positioned such that if I do go after the Leonines with my Steel Legion you see at the top of the photo, he can then charge in on the flank. So visualizing that if we charge in here, we've got the Steel Legion basically positioned like that. These guys come in the flank, they'll easily wipe out the Steel Legion, and then he goes after my Imperial Officer and takes this zone and that zone. So that's sort of where things are looking on this particular flank. We still have the stalled Biomancer over there. I just don't feel like this Biomancer is positioned particularly well, but he will have some options later. Now, the Mage, as you can see, just closing in. She's moved as close as possible to the Siegebreaker, shooting it, of course. And then we have the Avatara march charging in against the Hunter Cadra. I've forced him to do this, essentially. He's now lost 2 stands out of the previous 5 from the shooting, and he's deciding to commit here. The Knights are blocked off from charging while the Hunter Cadra are there, but I do have the other unit of Hunter Cadra in the background to turn around and shoot them from effective range. So this is where we are at. Note that his Avatara are now touching my zone, but the Knights are as well. So this is not actually capturing the points back off me. I still am in control of the zone on this side. Over here, we have the Imperial Officer who has had some wounds restored by the Water Mage, but not all of them, able to move up a little bit, and of course shoot over top of the Steel Legion because the Avatara, Leonine Avatara are size 2, and these are all infantry at size 1, so I'm just shooting over the back ranks with those crossbowmen at the enemy. Over here, we have some damage inflicted on the Hunter Cadra, of course, but they are still alive, and the Knights just sitting pretty in the meantime, just waiting for their opportunity. In this spot, we have some wounds healed back from the Household Guard, and that's come there from the Water Mage. Alrighty, so at this point, the Household Guard put in a bunch of attacks on the Siegebreaker. They have taken damage, but thanks to the attack from the Men-at-Arms and the crossbows, and of course Caliburn from the character, we are able to remove the Siegebreaker, so that is huge. Controlling the center, we are up against the Incarnate Sentinels, but I've got 3 regiments to his 2. 2 characters on my side, 1 on his, so I'm feeling pretty confident about that position. We then have the golden moment where the boys, the Steel Legion, finally get some action. They decide to go for a charge clash, and needing like a 5 to get in there, the roll is good. And of course, these guys come in wailing with their big, massive swords, and this is a incredible problem for the Leonines, who get thrashed. So, looking really, really good. We've got Steel Legion first, and Men-at-Arms next, and then Hunter Cadra, yeah, one of those cards is a militia unit. I just can't remember what that represented. Alright, so here's a look at the battlefield, and it is going quite clearly in my favor now, because on the left-hand flank, I've dealt with his Leonines. I'm about to lose the boys against the Centaurs, and then the Desolation drones are going to come in and put a lot of hurt onto my Imperial Officer. So if we break it down, my opponent is realistically going to get that zone and this zone, because his Desolation drones are going to come around here, the Centaurs are going to come through here, these guys are going to get wiped out. So he's going to be able to pick that up, but on the right-hand side, I'm quite likely to use the Hunter Cadra here and here and the Knights to deal with his Avatara. and then I could use the knights to go over here and attack his marksman clones, in which case I'd get these two zones, and in the middle he's really just got the Incarnate Sentinels and Biomancer against these three units, which is the Men-at-Arms, and they cross the Household Guard and the Mages mercenary unit. So that's how that looks. So of course the Centaurs charge through and they absolutely wipe out the Steel Legion, unsurprisingly. We have a beautiful move here by the Men-at-Arms, just getting in the way. What you can see here is that if the Incarnates charge them now, they're going to be stuck in this position, and of course the Household Guard are going to charge them in the flank. And of course with Caliburn and all that Cleave 1 and rerolling resolves, these guys are going to get obliterated. But if they don't charge, I'm still continuing to get points from the zone, and the Men-at-Arms can just hit them later, and the Mage can shoot them with crossbow bolts. So that's how we're going to defeat the Incarnates. On this side, we've got the two stands of Hunter Cadre here, turning around and shooting the Avatar at very close range, which does a bunch of damage to them. Desolation drones just doing a march around here against the crossbows, of course. Marksman clones getting a bit more damage done against the Hunter Cadre in the forest, although not at a particularly fast rate. You can see in the distance there, the Avatar have destroyed that one unit of Hunter Cadre, but now they have the Knights to contend with. On this point here, the Incarnates have taken the bait. They're going after the Men-at-Arms, but of course exposing their flank to the beautiful Household Guard regiment, so they're not going to be long for this world. The Mage able to shoot them as well with the Fire Dart and the crossbow bolts, or just to heal up the Household Guard, of course, which is a great little combo. Imperial Officer trying to get a few shots against the Centaurs, but they have pretty thick armor, not really achieving too much there with the Officer. He doesn't have a gun, of course. The Mage can actually heal back his unit, though, so the Mage going on the left there for the healing, and we've now got a bigger unit of crossbows to get the scoring done, which is quite nice. Alright, the beautiful charge in here by the Household Knights. We have the impact hits from the Noble Lord, and then of course we have the clash action as well, and with the wonderful rerolls, because this is a feudal character, and we have elsewhere a feudal warlord, so you've got the 6-inch bubble of rerolls, which does a lot of damage against this unit, pretty much wiping it out. Alright, so then we have the Household Guards charging in against the Incarnates, and that does a ton of damage to them. You can see they've destroyed the Men-at-Arms as predicted, but now they are paying the price of retaliation. Alright, so next up we've got crossbows first, and then we're going to eventually work our way around to the Knights last. They're going to wait for the marksman clones to take their action before they march charge them in the distance. And that's what it's looking like, pretty much game over now. So on the left-hand flank, he's just closing in with his last two scoring units on this side of the battlefield. In the middle, I'm just about to destroy his Incarnates, and on the right-hand side there, I've still got room for the Knights to go after the Desolation drones. A really important point, though, he has actually allowed this unit to survive. I've got one stand of Hunter Cadre left. The important thing there is that the Knights can now march over here and charge the marksman clones and destroy them, and then come back to this objective, but I'll still have one scoring unit there because they are mediums and they can rally and they can actually score from that zone for the rest of the game, which is why it is very favoured for 100 Kingdoms here, and I'm already, 4 to 8 points in the lead. Alright, so shootings with the Imperial Officers Regiment into the Centaurs. Then we have the crossbows, or the Household Guard against the Biomancer Regiment here, Incarnate Sentinels. These guys doing a bit of a reform to turn around and try and get a bit of hitting done. The Mage, of course, able to blast the Incarnates over top of the Household Guards, given this the size difference, so that's helpful there. Centaurs moving in to destroy the Imperial Officers unit quite handily, even with just 2 stands. They're able to inflict a world of pain onto those crossbows. Household Guard here have taken some damage, but they're able to retaliate and, of course, declare a duel against the Biomancer and just beat up on the Incarnates that have been healed a little bit, but still taking punishment. Desolation drones capping the objective in the background there. Marksman clones, again, trying to get some damage done on the Knights. This is still, the reroll 6's bubble here as well, which is useful, but just not getting a lot of damage done there. And this is where, of course, he would have been better off shooting at the Hunter Cadre, who are down to that last stand, and they still count as scoring, so they can, of course, rally and move into a position where they'll get onto that zone next turn. So the Knights, of course, move on to this other zone. I can now nominate this zone to be one of the ones that gives me +3 points, even though it's on his side of the board. This particular Knight has not taken all of its wounds yet, so I've still got the full unit of 4. So that'll net me a bunch of points, and then the next turn they can charge the marksman clones. So for the next turn, we're going to activate the knights first so that they can charge the clones, and then we're going to go into the mage and the crossbows and so on. That is the outlook of the battlefield. You can sort of see here on the bottom right, we've got that unit of Hunter Cadre, which is about to go in and score on the objective. The knights are going to charge the marksman clones. He's only got one incarnate sentinel left in the middle there, and these other two regiments can go after the mage and destroy them, but they're going to be sort of relegated to that part of the battlefield to continue with the scoring. So over here, we've got the Incarnates trying to do a bit of damage against the Household Guard, but there's just not enough of them left to really do a lot of damage, right? Over here, we've got the Centaurs going in against the Mage. Even with the two of them, the flank charge is able to wipe them out. Household Guard, of course, continuing to batter the Incarnates. And then the beautiful charge here from the Household Knights onto the Marksman Clones, able to really wallop them. Just send them back to wherever they came from. And that is pretty much it. We're ending in the situation where my opponent's really got just 3 regiments left. I've also only got 3 regiments left, but I'm in a position to kill the Incarnate Sentinels. And because I've been scoring very efficiently from the center of the table for about 4 turns in a row, I'm just so far ahead on points. As you can see here, how can we spin this around and make this a bit bigger? If we go through it, this is sort of the story of the game, really. Turn 1, you can't do any scoring. And in turn 2, I was able to move onto one of the zones and, of course, get the point from it plus the 3 points for moving onto it. So we got 4 there. My opponent didn't actually have anything fast enough to get there. And then in turn 3, we both scored an additional 4 points. Well, actually, we both scored 7 points there because we're moving on to a zone and we've captured 2 zones. And then the following turn after that, I'm getting another 7. He's getting just another 1 because he had to move something off a zone or just not get near to it. I think it was the Force-grown drones moving somewhere weird, charging me. And after that, you can see that I'm consistently scoring and getting all the way up to 43 points at the end of turn 7, with my opponent getting up to about 16 by that point. So there's no real mathematical way that he could have overtaken me by that point. So we just wrote off the last 3 turns. The little W you can see in the columns here, that indicates who won the roll for supremacy. So my opponent won it 4 times in a row at the start, which did give me the advantage a fair bit, but I kept losing the roll. But there were a couple of clutch moments later in there where I did manage to pull it back. So fairly even on the supremacy roll. And then you can see for turns 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8, we've sort of alternated between going first, so no big disparity on that side. Alrighty guys, well, really enjoying the new 100 Kingdoms. Another good game with them. This wasn't an optimal list or an ideal game. It was really just played with the models that I had on hand, but the new stuff will be arriving in the mail pretty soon. I'm going to be putting together some pretty big regiments and playing quite a lot of feudal stuff, I imagine. Hopefully Feudal Theist a fair bit. That looks to be my favorite combo so far. Love the Imperial Officer, but we're going to be trying out some Imperial stuff, some feudal stuff, similar to the list that I showed you before, and we'll find out if that's any good. Stay subscribed and liked to the video, and we'll see you again soon.